Hi, welcome to the B News Superintendent Update. I'm here with Burlington Public School Superintendent Dr. Eric Conti. Dr. Conti, thank you for joining me.
Of course, and welcome to you.
Thank you, yeah. It's our first time doing this, so I'm extra grateful.
Yep.
So I want to start out with some very good news. I think that it was recently announced that we're bringing on Dr. Lisa Chen as new Assistant Superintendent.
Yes, Dr. Chen will be joining us July 1st officially, and hopefully we can get her up here for some time, a few days ahead of July 1st.
What was it about her that made you enthusiastic about her for this position?
Well, it's really a combination of things. It was her experience. I think it was her performance in the jobs that she's had, her multiple jobs, from superintendent. She's been a superintendent all the way to sort of an assistant principal and all the way up. So again, she's very experienced. She had great recommendations. Her energy was really positive, and I think she'll bring a perspective to the central office here in Burlington that's needed. And so I feel like I can learn from her as well. So I think it's going to be rejuvenating and challenging for me.
That's awesome. Are there things that you're particularly excited to have her focusing on, or kind of on the flip side of that, are there things that having this position filled will sort of free you up to focus on, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think my philosophy over time has changed, right? So I was relatively new in my career when I came, and now having more experience, I really look for someone who had a complementary skill set to mine. So if you ask the folks who work for me, not always as detail oriented as I should be. So I think that Dr. Chen is going to be sort of bringing that detail, that follow through. I think she has great experience in curriculum oversight, curriculum development. And so I think the district is going to really look for more of a standardized curriculum review process, and that's going to be from pre-K through 12. And we need to have a common process, so our transitions from elementary to middle and then middle to high are smoother. And there's lots of things in the world that we can't control, but I do think one of the things that we can is our curriculum and the experience kids have in our schools and with that. And I just want to make sure I define curriculum, because everyone has this idea that it's a textbook or something like that. It's not. If we were fish, curriculum in school, curriculum be the water in which we swim. It's sort of everything. So I consider our curriculum from the time the student steps on the bus in the morning till the time they step off. That's really our curriculum. So just looking at that journey through a school day and through a school year and then through a school career is sort of what our curriculum needs to be organized around.
That's really interesting. I think that concept of the water that the fish swims in takes me to another thing that I wanted to ask you about, which is at a budget meeting, I think it was last week now, some of the elementary school principals specifically were asking about hoping that the next budget would include some additional resources for mental health support. And I think for a lot of kids, that's kind of the water that they're swimming in, is sort of the emotional, the social, the interpersonal dynamics in a classroom.
Sure.
So can you talk a little bit about what that request for, I think it was the term was adjustment counselor, what that looked like, and sort of how that's playing out in schools right now?
I will try. I think we have some very talented adjustment counselors, social workers, and they have good training. We've added a director of mental health for a couple years, and that's Christine Concession, and she's overseeing that from a district perspective. I think all that is really good and needed. Clearly, if anyone watches any sort of news, they would say there's a mental health crisis amongst children, students, adolescents especially, in that's ongoing. But it's not that simple either. So again, going back to my analogy, whether you like it or not, is classrooms aren't absent from social emotional support, mental health support. Walk into a preschool classroom and boy, tell that teacher that they're not dealing with the emotional needs of their kids. I mean, everyone does. So I do think it's It's an area of focus that we all have, and I think that's going to continue. I think our teachers are very good at that, building those strong relationships and sort of managing that. I do think for the students who need more and extra, I think we need to bring on the resources to make sure that we address that. Again, behavior, a lot of students, they communicate through their behavior. So behavior is a communication. It's also a skill. So it's sort of a funny idea where if you struggle in reading, we always say, okay, we're gonna teach you more reading, support you in reading. But if you're dysregulated or you need some support or there's a behavioral issue, you know, and it could involve some consequences at some point, but that's not teaching you the skill. So I think we're really trying to think about behavior as a learned skill and giving kids tools and the social emotional tools so that they can continue to grow and then attend to their learning. I mean, that's the goal. And so we have to really think about it as something that is explicitly taught and bring in the resources to make sure that we can provide that instruction for the kids who really need it.
Another kind of pretty significant, I think, proposal that came up at that same meeting was the possibility of a newcomers academy or expanded programming for you know, students who might have you know, come from immigrant or refugee backgrounds. Could you talk a little bit about what sort of where we are in terms of thinking about that? Are we definitely going to do it? Is it something we're thinking about? What's sort of the status of that?
I would say it's definitely something we need, and I think we need the resources to create an alternative day for students who need it. We really have a college preparatory high school. We don't have vocational programming here. We have an early childhood program, but outside of that, we really don't have vocational programming. We have a high quality second high school choice for students, Shawsheen Tech, for sort of those type of programs. But we have a new group of students who have been coming to Burlington for about the past 4 or 5 years. There's an acronym for them. I think it's called SLIFE, and it just really means that their learning, their instruction has been is interrupted, so they have an interrupted formal education, and which means that they could be high school age students, young adults, without a whole lot of formal education prior to. So it's really difficult for us to place students who need a significant amount of remediation and may not even speak English in a high school program that has sort of is very robust and moves at a very quick pace. And so a newcomer program would just be to bring students into our system of education, sort of get them some language support and get them prepared to survive high school, which many of us take for granted. And I'm sure if we were placed in without a language in a foreign country and thrown in a high school, we would need some support too. So, and I think that where we're seeing our achievement gaps widest and where we're seeing students who are struggling to make it through to graduation, it's with the students who need a different type of program than we've traditionally had here in Burlington to meet their needs. So clearly a need. I think that there's a cost to students not finishing high school, both for the individual students and for the community. So I do think it's a good investment to invest in these students and try to get them through a high school diploma.
So just to be clear, it seems like the specifics of the program would still be defined, but it might include different hours of the day that students are in school. It might include more of a focus on language, and the goal would be to sort of help students find their way back into the more traditional high school program when they're ready. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, or even take them through a diploma the whole way if that's what they want. Many students are needing to work full time. And again, that's a real challenge when you're trying to go to school full time. And so it's just a different population. And it's not new. It might be new to Burlington, but these students have been, thought of as, entering into our school system, the public schools through gateway cities, or through other communities, but we're just seeing a growing number of the student population. We want to welcome them. Again, I never want to have a deficit conversation when it comes to these kids. I do think they add a tremendous amount of growth and learning to our students here. I think it brings sort of that global perspective into our local high school. We have 57 languages spoken here at our high school, so we have a global presence anyway. And these kids just add a great feature to that diversity that we already have. So again, I just want to take advantage of that, and I want to make sure that we are offering a program that suits what their needs are, and really encourage them to get through a high school diploma, because that would really be a life-changing achievement for these students.
Yeah. The last piece I want to talk to you about is what sounds like a renewed attention or focus on the equity audit that was originally there was an effort around that last year. It sounds like there's a new contractor involved.
Yep.
What's going on there?
Yeah, there's a new contractor involved, and I think the effort was always there. We were just trying to juggle lots of different things. I think there's a commitment to getting it done, and to really looking at some of our access and outcome data through the eyes of from an outside perspective. We undergo audits all the time. We look at, again, who's being represented in our students with disabilities population. We look at, the state comes out and does that formally. The state comes out and does a formal audit looking at our students who are learning English, as a second language. And this is really us sort of taking on that role of, we also need to look at ourselves and our performance in terms of making sure that all of our student groups have, again, access and outcomes that every individual deserves, in our school system. That's all. So, what do you do with the results of those audits? What is having that concrete, qualitative, quantitative information? What does it allow you to do that you might not have in that sort of information vacuum or with less information? Well, we all have blind spots, right? So I've had the experiences that I've had growing up and sort of through my career, and I may not see something that the data may point out. So there could be a real issue that I'm not recognizing because of my blind spots and my background, my experience. And an audit looking at our data might say, hey, here's an area that we can improve on. We might find really positive things too. I'm not, again, looking necessarily through a negative lens, but it might say, boy, I didn't even realize that was an issue. And then, so I don't want to preclude the solution, but I'm sure there are areas that we can improve on. I get those emails every day, that we can improve on this and improve on that. And it's not that we don't want to improve on anything. It's just maybe that we need to prioritize that, and then make sure that we have a perspective that where we can see things that we can see through our blind spots, is I guess the way I would think about it.
Sure. Those are all the questions that I have for you. Is there anything else you want to add? It's spring, any sort of spring programming you're excited about?
Well, again, I can't believe it's the end of March already. And as we discussed sort of in the warm-up, March is a long month. And
sure
I just want to make sure I thank all of our educators and our staff. Everyone's been working really hard. And I do want to make sure that I just take a minute and a special expression of gratitude to our cafeteria workers. We have sort of brought in a new management company and new menus in the middle of the school year, and it was going to be a big transition, a big change. Anytime there's a change in sort of management in that department, and again, I think they've really tried to make it work, and I think ultimately it's gonna work out. But they've been really working hard and making sure that they're really trying to make adjustments. As the saying is, they're sort of building the airplane as it's taken off down the runway, and it does take a lot of effort to do that. So I just want to make sure I thank them.
All right. Well, that was Dr. Eric Conti, Superintendent of Burlington Public Schools, here for our regular Superintendent update. Dr. Conti, thank you.
My pleasure.